Hello everyone, and welcome to BlueMagicReviews, the channel that took way too long to make another video, but we're here now. As you may or may not have heard, the wonderful makers of Shovel Knight over at Yacht Club Games made another one, Mina the Hollower. It's a great callback game using the perfected pixelated style that Shovel Knight was known for, and has a wide variety of homages to old games that use pixel graphics. I can't speak. It's a wonderful adventure game with combat, puzzles, and a lot of fun things to see and find as you go through the world. Honestly, I could rant on and on about the game itself, but after so much time has passed and so much of my experience of doing videos has waned and gotten super rusty, I think it's best to start small. Small as a mouse. So for this video, I plan on reviewing one of the main game mechanics and what players use the most, the weapons. The insight I want to share is from my own personal streams you can find over at twitch.tv/BlueMagicReviews, where I play almost every day for about 3 to 4 hours, sometimes more, sometimes less. Depends on if I feel like exploding or not. Most of the gameplay footage you'll see is probably from there too, so sorry if it's a bit squeaky. You'll also be able to see exactly how I may or may not have come up with the things I say here, though, so check them out if you want. That said, I ended up breaking my fingers writing stuff down after each stream about how I felt about each weapon or its upgrades, so I plan on going over what they do, what I feel about them, and how I think they're properly used, along with just how they affect the game style itself. To also make things a little more personal, I wrote things down as they came up, more or less, so going in the order of when I obtained the weapon itself, rather than the order of what they are in the case that they show up in. For those who haven't played the game yet, or just looking up stuff to see what it's about, I'll tell you that there are 6 handy-dandy weapons you can maim your foes with in this game, each with their own mechanics and general playstyle behind them. Additionally, each of them have 2 upgrades to their names, which I'll also be covering. That said, I'll just be keeping the weapon order the same, not the order of when I got the upgrades, because some of them are pretty spread apart in when you can actually obtain them. I've also been told that the upgrades are pretty set in stone, as in the specific upgrade is always in a specific spot, so you're kind of expected to get them in a specific order. This is of course excluding the weapon you choose at the beginning of the game, because that upgrade is always transferred to a shop, while the upgrades that are still on the ship are just kind of on the ship. That might seem a little silly to go over, but I know someone will comment on it. I know you. Anyway, I've rambled enough about that, so I'm going to ramble some more about our main topic. So clean out your ears, erase your fears, and let me tell you about the Strike Maul. Otherwise known as the Hammer, at least in my brain. This was my first choice out of the 3 you get at the beginning of the game, simply because it was the first one I had ever seen and I decided, why shouldn't I smash everything into nothing? It's my goal in life. And I was instantly rewarded with the power beyond what a mouse should hold in their little paws. The power that Mina, our wonderful Hollower, objectively deserves. The hammer's overall control is surprisingly simple compared to what I found in other games with weapons like this, which is often very slow and very heavy. But most of the main weapons have a rather quick basic attack, and the hammer follows that trend really well with a quick swipe-like attack in front of you, somewhat reminding me of a smaller Link sword strike. However, the main focus of the hammer is its built-in charge-up mechanic that you both expect and are excited for right away. I can see you vibrating in your chair. Once you hold the button down, there's a slight charge time while Mina pulls the hammer up over her shoulder and then smashes down when you let go, doing massive damage to everything around it. The range on this attack is surprisingly large too. It's effectively a big square at least twice the size of the hammer that can hit things beside you and even hit them out of the air, something I enjoyed greatly in the swamps. Where are those wolves? On the moon, probably. Now, the downside of Mina's charge up is that it does lock you in place, somewhat. She stops the target whatever direction you had her facing, and you can roll around a set distance to properly position yourself either to hit someone or to dodge from harm coming your way as you're trying to get that perfect slam in. I found this mechanic of moving around to be fun, but extremely difficult to get to work in my favor. I'd often roll off something or roll into danger, especially since a majority of the time, I just wanted to roll and face the enemy that was worming around me and not much else. You can do that, of course, but it's surprisingly hard to do without rolling. Even now I'm not sure what the trigger is that lets you just turn instead of roll, but I think it's fine as it is. The pure power the hammer lets out is worth the risk of a few scratch marks. Perfect plasma monster pancakes take proper effort, after all. Now, once I upgraded the weapon, I was given a little extra boost in what I could do after I slammed the ground. This upgrade is pretty minimal, honestly, as most of them kinda are, but it still gives you a nice boost in what the hammer, or the Strike Maul, is capable of. Essentially all it does is give Mina a little extra spin attack forward once you finish landing your slam. You just tap the attack button after resting her shoulders a little bit, and then she lifts the hammer back up and spins it around like she's making cotton candy with her enemies inside. Why are they red instead of pink? This one's green? Gameplay-wise, this doesn't really affect much. It just gives you another follow-up for enemies that are able to survive the charge attack in the first place. But for me, I found it to be both a hindrance and a blessing in how I approach things with the hammer. As I said above, it gives you a little extra damage, but it also gives you a little bit of extra reach. Use this to get some enemies that are just barely able to avoid the slam, or enemies that were out of reach in the first place. Plant monsters in particular in the swamp level that I found this to be particularly useful on, not to mention enemies that were just jumping at me after I hit something else. Jerks. But the big hindrance for that one is that it's a bit slow, and Mina takes a moment to both start it up and put it away. This isn't a big deal overall, I mean the charge up is already kind of doing that, but it has gotten me hit a few times. The other issue with this spin attack is that it simply doesn't do as much damage as the slam down does. This means that if you hit one enemy with the slam down and blow it up, and then you're able to push the spin attack into the fresh version of the same enemy, there's a good chance it won't kill and you're probably gonna get bonked, since it doesn't push them away either, including that one guy. Whoop, there he goes. Overall though, I found this to be just a decent +1 to the hammer's gameplay, and just a pretty normal upgrade overall. Honestly, I think this is simply because the hammer already felt too good to use and was already very strong from the very beginning, so it was hard to add things onto it. Which brings us to the next part. The final upgrade to an already great weapon. What could it possibly be? It's more damage, of course. It just blasts through enemies like they're nails you're ready to hammer down. This upgrade simply lets you charge your attack up further, releasing a heavy explosion as you strike the ground and having a cute little bullet shell fly off, indicating that the extra power was from some explosive source. One at least the size of Mina's head, too. That's like 3 mice in our world. Just from this alone, it's a good way to boost the quality of the weapon's main function, charging up and slamming down. Unlike a few of the other upgrades that I'll cover which do a similar thing, this one feels natural due to the nature of charging your attack. It doesn't feel like it gets in the way of what the weapon needs to have in order to be better. It was already having a blast now, and now the blast is bigger, better, and here to mess you up. Well, mess up your enemies. But I think what really makes this upgrade work for me over some of the other upgrades I'll cover in a bit, it actually affects the other upgrade of the weapon as well. The spin attack you get as a follow-up also gets boosted if you manage to charge your maximum power, giving the spin a little extra force and strength to shred enemies to bits. I'm not sure cotton candy coated in gunpowder is safe though. Oh, and it's also a good thing that Mina's hands don't get torn apart too. Thankfully the game doesn't have enough pixel room for that. Still, I really appreciate that it affects the other part of the weapon's abilities in a positive way, and they don't just act as independent parts. They took into account the extra spin and respected it being the follow-up attack. They gave the damage boost to the extra attack too. That feels right to me. I'm glad I gave it a spin. So, my final thoughts on the Blast Strike Maul is that it's definitely the strongest weapon in this game in terms of raw power. While it does lack the mobility and versatility of all the other weapons, it makes up for it in sheer raw power, and of course the fun of blowing crap up. Personally, I think it's a good fit for the game, and its downsides are pretty minimal and easy to cover up with proper trinkets. Not to mention its only real downside, which is the awkward way to move while charging and the amount of time it takes to charge in the first place, are both things fixable with experience alone. The more you use it, the better it blasts. So you know, overall, if you're the type of follower that likes to hit things hard and show them that you're in charge, this is the weapon for you, and probably the weapon for many. Patiently waiting for that perfect time to strike, or just blasting every square pixel on the screen away with your strength, your blast will strike your foes down, and maul their bone to dust. And hey, then you can just throw it in the bank. But next is the weapon I was drawn to the second I saw it myself. The Battery Buster, which I feel acts as a homage to the old Mega Busters of old, and somewhat new, making Mina the official Mega Mouse we all wished for. And maybe not the one we deserved. So despite my claim of this being Mega, this Buster doesn't quite let you charge up your attacks right away, and it's vastly different from the rest of the weapons due to its mechanic of being a ranged weapon. Its bullets can go pretty far, and even bounce off walls a few times, creating a wall of death for your enemies to try and pierce through in some tight spaces. Or allowing you to get some sick shots off some wall bounces if you aim properly. Needless to say, having a lot of range in this game is extremely powerful for puzzle solving and fighting in general. This weapon can help you stay out of the danger zone for most fights, especially with bosses, and really lay into them with your limited shots. Yeah, you may have seen that little number in the corner going up and down a few times, because this weapon has a limitation that every other Mega Buster never had. Your shots are limited, starting with 8 bullets at a time. They decided to reasonably control the amount of power this weapon had over the rest of the weapons by forcing you to swap between melee form and your ranged buster in order to recharge your bullets. How? Smacking them with your gun to reload, of course. Each smack on aggressive enemies reloads 2 bullets and lets you get back to blasting with simple press of a button. Hitting grass or other objects in the world also gives bullets, but only one at a time. I mean, hey, fair, mowing the lawn takes a lot of work, but you get paid pretty well in bullets. You can also swap back to melee mode whenever you want, which strangely acts as an attack on its own, as I found out early on while swapping around and accidentally hitting up breakable walls. Oops. Sorry boss, I was just reloading my gun. In your house. However, I have to say, even as a melee weapon, this weapon is pretty comfortable. It swings in a wide arc over Mina's head, hitting directly in front of her and above her with a pretty generous range. Honestly, it felt more reliable than the default swing of the Strike Maul, but with far less power, of course. Again though, the real key to the weapon is the buster built-in. Even in times when you're out of plasma vials, you can rely on the shots to tear down enemies from a distance, as they even pierce through some walls and don't make you jump to shoot flying enemies, most of the time. I think I would definitely put it down as the most strategic of the weapons, and it really supports the hit-and-run gameplay style that the game has with a lot of enemies. You could reasonably use this for just the melee aspect too, which I greatly respect. Most weapons like this in other games have the melee or reload feature do basically 0 damage, but this one keeps it pretty standard. It has a decent speed, a fair size for its hitbox, and allows you to reload bullets off the random breakable objects in the world. Just a fair weapon all around and a wonderful design. Which is why I was pretty disappointed by the first upgrade I found, which allows me to charge the melee form into a mega attack, up to 3 beeps before you can release its maximum power to swing forward with much more force than usual. This doesn't seem to do too much more damage than usual, so it doesn't overshadow or just replace the Maul slam down, which is good. It's nice that each weapon has its own identity, but this upgrade is still noticeably weak. Due to the speed of the default attack, I sort of felt like I could do that much damage in just a few swings rather than slowly charging up and letting it swing. However, one benefit that this charge-up attack has over the hammer's charge-up attack is that you're able to move normally while doing it, albeit with Mina stuck holding her weapon out, still able to turn but with a weak jump. It does cause enemies to just kind of bounce her around too if they keep running into her weapon. But that's not really a problem for you. Overall though, I felt disappointed by this upgrade. Until I realized that it still has a hitbox even while it's charging up. That opened a whole new door for me in how you can use this weapon. Some players may immediately recognize that this is exactly how Link to the Past charge-up attack works. You point your weapon forward and you can poke enemies with your sword. And, well, in this case it's a gun, but hey, if it hurts, it works. I think this upgrade is disappointing because you're waiting for the big one, but it still has its own benefits to this weapon. It makes the melee part more versatile, especially since you can just charge it up, point at someone for a bullet, then swap back and shoot them with that bullet. It really makes the melee part feel more alive instead of just spam fest to get bullets back like I often use it as. Of course, everything I just said depends on if you can remember the charge attack exists or not. I had a bit of trouble remembering, oh right, I can charge up my melee attack! What a mega failure I am! Man, for some reason I keep thinking it's a bullet part that gets charged. Because it is. The final upgrade for the battery buster is exactly what you expect it to be. It charges up, changes your body to blue, puts a little cap on Mina's head, and has you scream, Mega Buster! The massive orb of destruction and terror. Well, it does at least one of those things. To the melee charge up, this version has multiple levels of charge before it reaches its maximum power to deal the maximum amount of damage. How many times can I say maximum? At least one more time so I can tell you that it goes up to 30 damage at max damage level. That's a pretty decent boost, and it gets better. I assume it's on purpose, but after blasting away once, you can tap your attack button again to send out a second orb of the same size without any cost. That's doubling up on your damage and there's no real time window for it. The next attack is just bigger blast if you manage to get the first one off. You'd think this would feel odd with the amount of power behind the attack, but this isn't like the Mega Busters of old. Oh no. Unlike some Mega Men out there, us Mega Mice have to work for our charge up, and it shows, because if you even get slightly tapped while charging up, then beep, there it goes. You're back to baby bullets, and well, you may have noticed I said without any cost before, because charging up does have a surprising cost that I wasn't prepared for. It costs extra ammo to shoot these shots. Specifically 2 to charge it up, then 3 to fire it off at max power. You go from 8 to 5 by charging it up just to max power, and then 2 after you fire it off. You know, technically speaking, it only costs 2 to actually charge it up, then 3 to fire. However, a small flaw of the charge up is that you have to hold down the button to begin the process. That means you press it. That means you shoot it. Which means that another bullet shoots out that you suddenly have to reload in order to get the bigger shot you wanted. Blech. It's honestly the worst part about the upgrade, although charging it up does also hurt your jumping ability too, just like the melee charge up. Just like the melee charge up, you can still do a little hop to avoid some enemy attacks, notably the hopping Pikmin, but you won't be flying over any gaps in the floor or spikes threatening your toes, oh noes. Still, if I had to look at it objectively, rather than as a player, this function is healthy for the game's balance, since you just sit back sniping enemies with giant orbs of death if the ammo cost wasn't there. Outside of that, its biggest weakness is that it takes a while to charge, and some bosses simply won't let you do that in most situations. But when you do get that shot off, the fight is surely in your favor. Overall, this upgrade is exactly what you'd expect from this kind of gun outside the ammo cost, and I was not disappointed from its damage, especially after figuring out the double shot mechanic. Additionally, while charging it up, you can also aim diagonally, and it's everything you'd expect. I had a bit of trouble with this personally, as I was using a controller with a tiny bit of drift that would make Mina snap back to a cardinal direction, causing me to miss all these dang cardinals trying to chew her face off. Get out of here, you stinking birds. Ugh. But when I use the D-pad or the arrow keys on my keyboard, she aimed appropriately. You can also just have her snap diagonally and then fire right away if you're fast enough too. Busting up foes with this gun feels a lot better with the charge. So, my final thoughts on the Battery Buster is that it's simply my favorite weapon in the group. While the others have their uses as well, the Buster just fits the hit and run style of this game perfectly. Plus, you know, who doesn't like to go pew 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 pew? Also, despite having two different charge mechanics built into it, both add to the versatility of both sides of the weapon and give you extra power that you may feel it's lacking. I've also been saved many times in this game simply by having the power to switch back to a ranged attack, either because my health was too low and I needed to take some safety shots to regain my health, or because the puzzles could be solved with a ranged attack fairly easily. Of course, some have trouble with it, since the orbs bounce back and forth, so, this can happen. This may not seem like much because it's a safety zone, but I assure you, it caused trouble. But, being able to bounce off corners and tear through several enemies at once is a great feeling. And totally all planned. Yep, definitely all of them were planned. I definitely didn't make a single shot that was just me aiming randomly and, oh, well, there goes 3 guys. Regardless, despite my initial dislike of the ammo system, it grew on me as things went on, since it made me actually interact with enemies in a way I wouldn't have with just a gun weapon. Having to jump in, get a few shots in, then jump away to either charge a shot or just spam them with a few little ones felt really fun. That said, it is a bit of a shame that the two upgrades don't really interact with each other at all, since they're just charge mechanics for either form. It would have been more interesting if the melee upgrade made the orbs more bouncy and let you smack them around the room back at enemies, but at the same time, I think this is the one weapon in the group that really doesn't need its upgrades to interact with each other. Perhaps that's just personal bias, but I think the Battery Buster feels like it's really 2 weapons in one, and their design is more about the way you're able to switch between which form you need for each moment, and having the same charge mechanic for their upgrades keeps them balanced, gameplay-wise. It also helps each form feel like they aren't overshadowing each other either. Sort of like the 2 weapons built into one set, working in unison. Of course, I'm talking about Whisper and Vesper! These knives require Mina to dual-wield them for their ultimate effect of, you guessed it, stabbing. Stabbing and stabbing and stabbing and stabbing until there's just nothing left to stab anymore, but then you can find more things to stab. But at the same time, that's all they've got at this level. As you expect from quick blades like this, they're fast, and their range isn't half bad, and effectively make sure that no enemies can approach you directly from the front, or at least few of them can. But that's about it. Of the weapons so far that we've talked about, I found these blades to be the most lacking in terms of power and versatility. Not only do they only stab forward where Mina is looking, allowing for quite a few enemies to approach her from behind or the sides where stabbing is a no-go, they also lock her movement entirely while stabbing. As long as you're stabbing away, Mina's feet are there to stay. She will not move until you stop or your enemies die. Or, you know, she dies, but that's beside the point. I find these knives at this level to not be horrible, as they do definitely get the job they want to do done, but it's just less reliable than the Maul or the Buster were. However, that all changed with the first upgrade I found, which unlocks another attack, a sort of slicing forward attack that covers a bit more room and launches you forward just a tiny bit. Overall, it's not much, yet it has versatility that this weapon kinda really needed. For one, it doesn't lock you in place and covers more range than the typical stabbity-stab thrust attack that this weapon uses for default attacks. It can hit things on either side of you, reminding me again of Link's usual sword slice, but it hits both sides instead of just one. Whereas, you know, when you swung with Link, you just kind of swung up. Yeah, this may not feel like much, but it does help in a few situations where a lot of enemies are jumping around, like the slimes or water skippers. I wish we had a glossary for these things. That said, it's still not very strong, and the distance it covers by the jump was a bit smaller than I wanted it to be, honestly. It's not going to strike down larger enemies as fast as just stabbing them normally would either, but that's pretty fair. Skewering your foes sounds much more effective than slicing them to bits when it comes to effective food transport. All in all though, it's a decent upgrade, and since it's locked down to its own button, it doesn't get in the way unless you want it to. If I could give it a small boost, I'd probably let you move a bit more freely while she's slicing around. Giving some extra movement will allow you to chase down enemies, and even allowing you to turn will give you some flexibility that the default weapon sorely lacks. Of course, if you're trying to hit enemies from far away, you're pretty much stuck with sub-weapons or another weapon entirely until you unlock the final level of Whisper and Vesper, which is a hilarious and honestly brilliant twist on the weapon that I didn't consider until it was in my hands, or, rather buried deep in the back of my enemy who's like, over there. This upgrade allows Mina to charge her weapon for a moment and then toss one of the knives as hard as she can towards whichever direction she's facing. Was it a whisper in the wind that sliced through a wolf's back? Or was Vesper merely flying towards them to show them their final light? Only Mina knows which hand holds which blade. Cheesy line aside, before Mina eats by cheesy words, this is a solid upgrade that actually makes the weapons a lot more fun to use all around. I found myself wanting to toss the knives around just because I could, really. As it turns out, Mina has a strong arm on her, and this knife can be tossed across an entire swamp screen if you aim well enough. All that you have to watch out for is when it hits something, it drops. Despite it being a set of magical daggers, whatever blade you toss doesn't come back to you unless you foolishly dropped it into some place you couldn't reach, like the bottom of the ocean. Whoops. But if you drop it down there, it's nice enough to just drop down to your hands a few seconds later, allowing you to toss it again or just attack normally. You also may notice I just said normally there, because Mina isn't a fool that tosses her weapons until she's completely disarmed. Once you toss one of these knives, she keeps the other one on hand, and you're not allowed to toss that as well, which allows her to move a little bit faster, but attack a little bit slower since she's one arm down. A weapon that has a range attack and doesn't leave you defenseless when you're out of shots? Even the Buster struggles with that, since it does have a brief period of changing forms before you're allowed to swing it around. The knives must also weigh more than we think, since tossing Whisper or Vesper causes Mina to speed up a bit, giving you a tiny boost in movement speed so you can reach the knife that you threw a little bit faster. It's overall a good upgrade, and it seems the tossed knife acts as a massive attack, doubling a normal stab's damage, as if you threw 2 knives instead of just 1. This attack also pairs really well with some trinkets. Of course, I haven't gone over the trinket combinations overall yet, I think that deserves its own video, honestly, but I wanted to say I personally use the Lightning Orb trinket with the knife toss. This trinket just sends out a bolt of electricity forward if you're full health or plasma, doing a little damage, but the knife and the bolt move the same speed. It gives the toss blade a little battle aura of its own as it zooms in and blows up on whoever dared be in your way, Altogether, the final upgrades for Whisper and Vesper made the knives a lot more fun for me to use, at least, personally. Unlike the other weapons we've gone over so far, it didn't feel like these blades had their own gimmick. They were just stabby-stab blades and nothing more. Basically Zelda 1 style of forgettability. But with the slash forward ability mixed in with the toss, I found the weapon to be a lot more interesting. The fact you can alternate to slash forward even while missing a knife also helps a lot with this, as I found a fun combo of throwing one knife and then using the slash attack to catch the knife in mid-air, then quickly stabbing an enemy in the face, or the back, whichever they happen to be showing me at the time. This interaction alone makes the weapon feel great for a lot of the small enemies running around. But more than anything, these upgrades really give the knives their own personality as a hit-and-run kind of weapon, which I know I've said before about the Buster, but giving these knives extra range, mobility, and usefulness in a lot of situations just really help them out. Especially against bigger enemies they have to scurry away from, rather than being locked in place stabbing at the air until they get closer. Now you can slice or stab an enemy away, toss your knife, dig under their feet to pick it up, and then repeat. Over and over again. Or something like that, depending on the enemy. It really fits the hit-and-run style Mina likes to use. Of course, you can't hit and run all the time. Sometimes you need to stand your ground. And the best weapon for that is the Guardian Casket, a parry master's dream and nightmare combined. Appearance-wise, I find it fascinating that it seems to be, well, a coffin that Mina just picked up and said, "Hey, I can use this. You got a problem with that ever-screaming Dark Souls inside?" And they just shrugged and said, "Let's go, but no let them touchy. Touchy bad." And that's the story of the weapon, more or less. Now, first off, I expected this weapon to be extremely slow, but it's actually just as fast as the rest, excluding the knives. Biggest downside would be the range, which is about as small or just as small as the swipe that the Maul uses in its default swing. It also barely covers anything, as it's just Mina slamming forward, shoving her shoulder into it like it's a door that needs to be kept shut, or one she's trying to open from the wrong side. That said, this isn't the main focus of the weapon at all, and it quickly becomes apparent to me that it's the Dark Souls player's dream as it becomes the epitome of a parry weapon. For those that don't know what that means, I fear for you, firstly, but also it's pretty simple. Press the attack button the same frame, or rather right before, that you normally take damage, and boom! No damage. Instead, the pain transfers directly into the screaming souls you trapped inside your casket, and they are not happy about that. But not at you. Oh no, they love Mina. Mina is their friend, and they are instead focusing all of their rage forward, tearing apart everything in their path to get at whatever was trying to hurt their friend. Effectively, this blocks damage that would have happened, and then a bunch of hands fly forward, dealing extra damage to everything in their path as previously stated, And then everything goes back to normal, like nothing happened. Like the screaming souls of the endless dead didn't just reach forward and pull your enemies inside. It barely lasts a moment, but it's always noticeable when it happens, and you might be thinking, wow, what a weapon! Is there a downside? And the answer is kinda, but not really. Not yet, at least. See, my problem with this weapon comes from my hatred of one thing: contact damage. If you touch something, they hurt you. Pretty standard, and a lot of enemies need that in order to function. They simply don't have normal attacks. Their existence itself is their attack, and nothing else brings you or them more pain than existing. But that's still damage. Damage that the Casket can, and will, block so long as you're hitting the button as you jump into your enemy. Genuinely, I think this is hilarious, and it's not even the enemies attacking you at this point. You're jumping into someone and screaming, "Help me, Dark Souls! They're trying to give me the bad touch! Help!" And they're screaming and raving to defend you immediately. What good friends? You know, rabid fanboys. Take your pick. This can be exploited a lot for the bigger enemies who are just a massive hitbox you can jump into, and I think it makes the weapons really strong. So long as you have the rhythm and the rhyme to know when to press it, and sometimes even when you don't. Just spamming it works too. But be careful, because you will get hit if you're still inside an enemy's hitbox, no matter how much you're spamming. Mina may swing the weapon fast, but not that fast. Now, I haven't really listed my problem with it, and that's simply that I have no rhythm. I have no rhymes. I'm just stuck in a prism of my own crimes. I've always sucked at these kind of games, excluding Sekiro, which I was somehow good at sometimes, check out my stream bots, and the Casket is not really an exception. I tried to use it after getting it for a while, and we used it pretty well, I think, even defeated a boss with it properly. But the parry mechanic is just simply beyond me overall, so I put it away to give another weapon a chance until I reached the next level to see how it felt then. That said, I still think this weapon is designed well, and people who have the patience to time out blocking attacks would find this to be a very strong weapon for them. It can even block bullets if you time it right, I think. Its only real weakness is that it only strikes forward, and well, sometimes the timing can be a little finicky. That's just from my perspective though, as I said, I have no rhythm. So what feels like just the right moment is actually 4 beats after it, or before it. Only thing I can tell you for sure is that regardless of the beat, I'm still taking some damage on some note. Which becomes even more of a problem as we reach level 2. Leveling the Guardian Casket was probably the worst thing I could do for this thing, and I was quickly made aware of that being a common thought that this was a mistake. I kinda expected some type of like charge-up attack, or perhaps letting you hold down the attack button and keeping the shield steady in front of you to block bullets, at the cost of losing the parry while you're charging or something. You know, give it shield abilities that you'd expect. But instead, they strangely give you the ability to throw the shield out in an arc, where it returns to you like a boomerang as the souls inside don't want to leave Mina alone. They've seen what she gets up to. The concept of this isn't bad on paper, honestly, and it even has an added benefit of giving you some cool movement technique. You can jump on the shield it's returning to get some extra distance in your jump, similar to some of the puff plants used in a few other puzzles. However, the way you activate it is just ridiculously silly, as it activates by tapping the attack button more than once. The window is pretty wide too, you have to purposely pace your attacks to avoid throwing your shield out, and I just can't understand the thought behind this. Like, really, imagine trying to block an attack so you double tap the weapon and whoops, there it goes! You just threw your shield and now it's sailing away into the distance, leaving Mina completely unguarded. Of course, the souls do hear your screams of fear and pain and will return if you attack a third time, but that still leaves you open for a few moments. Because of the rest of the polish this game has, I genuinely am surprised that the issue slipped through the cracks, especially with it being a main weapon. I suspect no one on the testing team really focused on button mashing types when it came to this weapon, and by this I just mean they probably didn't expect anyone to use the shield as an aggressive weapon, despite the parry going off when you hit the hitboxes that you can run into. They probably figured just giving it some extra range for some silly attack was good enough. Even as a range attack though, it is lacking pretty hard, as the arc it covers leaves a wide open area in front of Mina, again making the shield one of the least defensive items if you use this attack. Even then, I think I'd still like to have it on the alternate attack button. As it is though, this upgrade hurts the weapon, both defensively and offensively, and I would not blame you for selling it, but you can do at the pawn shop in the town. All in all though, it's a huge letdown, but not as much as level 3. Simply a bigger bang for your perfect parries. Similar to a few other games I vaguely recall, like Sekiro, Dark Souls, Hollow Knight, and a few others I've probably played but can't think of at this moment, this upgrade gives you an extra boost in damage when you get that perfect parry off, rather than the jokingly lenient window they give you with the default parry. Basically, if you are frame perfect, then your souls don't just reach out and slap your enemies away, instead they clap for you as they blast everything in front of you and a bit harder, slapping away would-be damage along with your opponents. But that's all they do. While this doesn't feel nearly as damaging as the previous upgrade, I feel this is another sign that developers didn't really have anyone on the team that really loved parry mechanics. Because this is awful as an upgrade, and it really feels like a slight insult. Of course, that's coming from me, someone who sucks at parrying, and perhaps it's exactly what a parry-type player would want. But, personally, I think a final upgrade for a weapon like this, I feel it needed an upgrade to cover its weaknesses rather than a bigger boom. Like, this isn't the blast Strike Maul, whose entire existence is about that big boom. No, this is a shield, a casket full of roaring souls that want to keep you safe and kill everything that tried to touch you. Extra damage? That's fine, but I think they moved it in the wrong direction with this. Instead of just a straight boost in damage, I think this upgrade should have turned parrying, maybe perfectly, into a big explosion around Mina. This would cover her biggest weakness with the shield, which is simply that it only strikes in front of her, leaving her back open to attacks. Having the souls explode outward like the angry mandrakes do would have felt a lot better and made a lot more sense, I think. I'd also have to say this doesn't synergize at all with its previous upgrade in the slightest, but the previous upgrade being that shield toss doesn't really synergize with the shield at all, nor did it really need to. Perhaps if the shield toss also could count as a parry, this damage boost might have worked with it too, but as it is, both these upgrades fell pretty flat, and now the souls are roaring into the dirt. Anywho, my final thoughts on this weapon are simple. It's a shield. If you enjoy the patient style of waiting for an attack to come to you, blocking it, and then going for the kill, this isn't a terrible weapon for what it is. Sure, the souls are noisy and need to be in bed by 8, but they'll keep you safe when you really need them to, during those tight spots where you're a whisker away from death. I can definitely see this being a weapon used for a lot of challenges like no health or defense upgrade runs. But due to the nature of its upgrades, I can't really say it's all that good, even for that. You'll probably end up pawning off the toss mechanic and then keeping the damage boost, because, it's a damage boost, but sorry, Casket of Souls, you're just falling a bit short to reach the other side. But as for a weapon with a lot of reach, we come to our almost final weapon of the game, the Night Star. The Night Star's flavor text of it being on a flexible chain immediately stood out to me as something I looked forward to, and was immediately disappointed by. This thing's as flexible as a stick. Sturdy, long, and definitely able to poke someone for a lot of damage, but flexible it is not. This is something I was certain changed with upgrades, but if I had to compare Night Star to something, it'd be the two knives, Whisper and Vesper. They shoot straight forward from your hands to hit something directly in front of you, and nothing else. No flexibility at all in its movement. However, unlike the bad mares that the default knives give you, this ball and chain doesn't keep you stuck in place when you strike, and you can properly jump away or turn as fast as you want. Additionally, the range on it is a bit longer, making it the longest of all the weapon's default attack by a comfortable range. Well, all the melee ones. Cluster doesn't count. This is probably the biggest perk overall for those that like to keep their distance in fights and not have to sniff your enemy's burning flesh as you pummel them into pastries. Still though, as the default level, I can't say I'd recommend it very much over the knives, as it does follow behind in speed. But perhaps I simply need to be more flexible in my own thinking though, and simply upgrade it to level 2. I wasn't surprised this is the first big upgrade I got, and I'm sure that my flexible thinking willed it into existence. This upgrade lets you hold down the attack button and then swing the weapon around town as much as you want, finally letting you use that flexible chain it boldly states it has to your face. This immediately started giving me flashbacks of spinning the whip around to smack away vampire bats in some vain castle. As you'd expect from this upgrade, it's fun to just look at, but it's also really useful in catching those more pesky moving enemies. You can even work it around the enemies that have shields, letting you smack them on the side of the head a few times before they figure it out they should probably get a little closer. Sadly, this mode comes with 3 weaknesses that I wasn't a big fan of. The first being the obvious damage loss, but that's expected. If you could just spin it around like a tornado of death, then all your enemies would get blended and splat into the sky way too fast and way too easily. Pretty sure that counts as some kind of war crime too, and Mina has enough of those on her plate. The damage loss isn't really that big of a deal in the end either, as it's still able to do this damage fast, and that's what matters in a lot of fights. Just being able to smack away the smaller enemies or smack the bigger ones a lot more than you normally would is enough to turn the tide of battle, even if it hurts the hit and run style Mina often uses. Which is the second issue I had with it. You're stuck in place. You cannot move during this, since your movement stick is, moving the chain. Which is very flexible with how it moves. Mina doesn't even have to look at it to swing it behind herself. Impressive, but it takes away the flexibility of Mina's legs she uses to run and leaves you wide open for larger attacks or things that don't really care about your ball and chain. Of course, this is not a huge deal. You can just let go of the button and start moving, of course, but there's a slight delay before you're able to actually start swinging the weapon around too. You have to hold it for a brief moment, and in that moment, you're stuck. And the Night Star's default attack speed isn't too fast either, and your foes will take advantage of that brief window you leave yourself open. Much like the Casket, I feel like this could have been the alternate attack button, letting you just stop and swing the weapon around or even letting you move while doing it. The cost for this could have just been a bit of the attack range or even a little extra damage getting shaved off, which does bring me to my final issue with this upgrade, and the last one. Because the Nightstar's final upgrade is just to boost the damage at the end of the weapon. Dreadfully underwhelming in terms of an upgrade, the Nightstar doesn't get much better. Now, do not get me wrong, it's a pretty understandable upgrade that fits the default attack of this weapon pretty well. It encourages you to use the weapon's strengths, which is keeping a range away from your enemies and using the ball and chain to its maximum potential, which is great. The attack boost is also not bad. At the time I got it, I went from doing 16 damage to 20. Is that a lot? No idea. I was never really paying attention to the numbers. But it's still a significant enough boost that it could definitely kill some things that would otherwise have killed you. And I've definitely got my butt kicked a few too many times by something that lived with just a sliver of health. All that said, I had 2 complaints about this upgrade right away, and the first is that it's kinda boring. Especially as a final upgrade. Maybe I would have felt better if I got this as the first upgrade instead of the last, but unlocking the chain mechanic was a lot more fun. A boring upgrade right after that was pretty disappointing. But my real issue with it is also my final issue with the first upgrade. They don't work with each other. The way the final upgrade of the Nightstar works is that if you hit something with the tip or the end of the weapon, it does more damage, right? But that's not the case for when you're spinning it around. It simply does the same damage it always does, even without this upgrade, and that feels a bit silly to me. It's already a bit difficult to properly hit things with the Nightstar as is, even when swinging around, because, well, I mean, you're just standing there, menacingly, waving your chain around like an angry spiky snake. It's intimidating, to be sure, but your enemies are not smart. They are the dumb, and the dumb will run at you and run at you and run at you and run at you until they are dead, because the dumb can't be intimidated by things if they don't know what fear is. So it'd be nice if we had a little extra damage to make them dead, extra damage that helps you keep them in that safe range, which is what this upgrade is for. Now with this upgrade, you're more inclined to use it instead of the flailing chain to do damage, which isn't bad, but it'd just be nice if they worked together. But here are my final thoughts on Nightstar and what it represents, which is safety. Unlike the rest of the weapons, yes, even the Casket, the Nightstar handles things perfectly for Mina to stay safe without too much effort. You don't need to parry perfectly or do some extreme maneuver to get away from an enemy, you just need to hit them from a specific range, maybe wiggle the chain around a bit to do some extra damage and knock them away, then move away from them to your next spot when they get too close anyway, cause they don't respect you, and you don't respect them. It's one to get close to you and get your autograph because you're the star of the night, but you have to keep them at bay because their pins are knives and their knives are pain. Pain is scary, which is also why enemies hold up shields, hoping to get close by blocking attacks with them. You're safe from shields because the Nightstar just goes around them and smacks them away. It's safe. You're safe with the Nightstar. But you are slow. And boring. That's my biggest takeaway from playing with Nightstar the least out of all the weapons, excluding one. It's slow and boring, but it is safe. It doesn't handle the smaller bosses very well, like Thorn for instance, as they like to fly around a lot, but against enemies that have a lot of build up to their attacks and mostly use their bodies to hit you, you can keep them at a distance and stay safe. Just smack them away, dig away, and smack them again. That may sound like it's the same for every weapon, and it is, but the Nightstar is a much slower weapon about it and keeps you at a much larger distance. I think it's probably the one that works with sub-weapons the best too because of this distance. This is simply because a lot of sub-weapons tend to have a decent reach to reach their full potential and don't want to be too close to you when you use them, excluding the ones that make you dash. So the ball and chain connected to you, keeping you way down at medium range you want to be at because both of its upgrades, helps stay at that slow and boring range that the sub-weapons like to be in. Overall, it's not a bad weapon, but it's not for me. I like rushing in and doing stuff, or at least staying far and doing stuff. I like moving. I like actually landing my hits the first time. Because, I don't know why, but I had a rough time actually hitting things with the Nightstar if they weren't sitting still or running at me directly. It just felt rough and slow. How many times can I say that? On a separate note though, this weapon is the only one I didn't defeat a dungeon boss with. For those curious, my list went as such. The Crypt, I beat it with the Blast Strike Maul. Nox's Bayou, I beat it with the Blast Strike Maul. You can tell which one I started with. The Septemberg, I beat it with the Casket. Bone Beach, I beat it with the Battery Buster. Coltrane Peak, I beat with Whisper and Vesper. Astro Orrery, if that's how you say it, I beat it with the Battery Buster. And the final boss, I beat with the Battery Buster. I did really want to use Nightstar to finish up a dungeon, but I also wanted to have fun with the final areas, so I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Perhaps if I had obtained it before Nox's Bayou, I would have beaten a boss with it, but who can say? Like the stars in the night, they just faded away too slowly for me. Anywho, those are all my opinions and reviews on the weapons and... What? There's one more? It wasn't me messing up when I said 6 at the start of the video? You probably thought I did, but... Mina? What are you... Oh. There's one more. And it's a beast. I wasn't told of this until I had literally beaten the game already, so I had no idea it was a thing, although I had my suspicions. But by obtaining all 6 of the Beastium trinkets, you can wear all of them at once, take a drink of some sparkling, delicious plasma, and... beast up. This technically isn't a weapon, but since it replaces your weapon, your sub-weapon, even has its own techniques, I'll count it. That said, what an annoying find! Just for this video at least, because I was almost done. I thought I was at the end of the Night Star Park, I'd be like, okay guys, that's it, here's how I hear them all, blah 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 blah. Instead, I'm having to deal with this fireball and hulk of a mouse, who's honestly really cool. They even changed the portrait in the menu, that's a great attention to detail, although I was sad that she just goes poof, right back to normal. At least when you talk to people with it active or do some other thing. Sad days. I really wanted to see at least one other character react to it, you know? But anyway, the beast is... there. That's honestly the best way I can think of describing it off the Burning Alive bat, honestly. Even though I'm counting this as a weapon, it doesn't really feel like any of the others. It has no upgrades, no description, no style, no grace, and it gives her a funny face. It simply is... there. Once you boost yourself up with some plasma and roar into the night at a terrible flavor it graces your lips, you'll find that Mina has a lot more presence to her physical form than ever before. She's there and makes sure that everyone around her knows it, unless she talks to them directly, of course. It's polite to put your weapons away when you're talking to someone, even if those weapons are your claws. Just ask your cat. Oh, they're stabbing you? Yeah, that tracks too. But to start with the beast necessities here, the first thing you'll notice, as I mentioned, is that Mina gets big. Real big. Like, that's at least 3 Minas in a trench coat, size-wise, and while I can't say for sure, it definitely feels like it affects your hitbox. Hard to say though, since I'm such a damage magnet normally, but it did feel like I was getting hit a little more than usual. This doesn't affect any of your platforming size as far as I can tell, as long as you ignore the things that are knocking you into pits at least. Burrowing underground is also unaffected and still jumps the same distance, so no problems there either. So outside of getting big, what does this do? Well, it teaches Mina that the greatest weapon of all was herself. And these giant claws. She's got paws and she isn't afraid to throw down with even the biggest enemies. Of course, I do want to note again that I only learned about this after I had already beaten the game, so... the only boss I could have used this on was the final one, and I didn't do it. I mean, I tried it briefly after just getting it, but I decided it wasn't for me or this video, which is why I didn't put any footage of that here. So, instead of fighting bosses, I instead fought the world, and used the Beast Mina as much as I could while running around cleaning up the remaining trinkets, gears, and bone shards I didn't manage to get before finishing the game. This does give me a slightly slanted view on how this weapon works, since I was running around fighting while at max level and mostly weak enemies too. Still, I think I got a good enough insight on how it works overall and can tell you how I feel about it. Well, combat-wise, Beast Mode works unlike any of the other weapons entirely. Instead of just a basic attack and some other silly gimmicks, this version of Mina has a whole collection of moves to use to attack her enemies. Her default attack is replaced with a 1-2-3 combo that does 2 swipes and a big slam, which hits a decent area. These swipes are pretty fast and pretty much feel like normal attack speed, and the slam down covers roughly the same range as the default hammer's strike down. She can also move a little bit while throwing these attacks and turn freely, so you got a lot of control over how and when you attack. However, these attacks are big, and so is Mina, meaning if there are any bouncy enemies around, you're gonna hit them and you're gonna bounce around town. The second thing you'll probably notice is that Mina's sub-weapons have been completely replaced with a fireball move. This fireball costs some jewels, like a sub-weapon does, but it can increase in power depending on which part of your attack combo you're in. I didn't really experiment with it too much, but it looks like you can shoot 3 fireballs at the end of a combo, and they do some good damage. But otherwise, you just shoot one little pitiful fireball. They do not, however, count as fire. So sorry, you can't use Beast Mina to skip any part of Septemberg. Or get rid of the evidence. I tried. The final part of the combo attack is that you can also do a spin, and it's fun. It took me forever to get it right, since the text on the BCM just says change the timing. But it looks like it's just pressing the attack and jump button at the same time, causing Mina to spin around like a blender and shred enemies and nothing. I can't really say which one's more effective in terms of damage, but it feels like spinning does more damage overall. Well, now you're thinking, is that it? Are we done? The answer is no, of course not. You can't forget about the main ability of the game when you're beasting out, right? I definitely never did that. So, if you burrow underground while your claws are big enough to create a new swamp in one swipe, you get 2 extra moves you can use. The first is a swipe forward while you're underground, dashing forward a little bit and slicing through anything that you pass. Well, slicing their toes at least. You do less damage than normal attack, of course, but it's a safe way to kill something that's causing you trouble, since being underground means you're still invulnerable. It also kinda feels like you're underground a little bit longer, but I couldn't really tell you for sure. The other ability is much cooler though, and a bit harder to pull off. With some jewels, of course, you can light your fist up and punch into the sky with a rising uppercut. This launches Mina into the air and punches whoever or whatever happened to be above her, granting them a quick death. Although it looks like it just does normal attack damage. Yeah, well, at least it looks cool and it can hit things in the air. But now your final ability, which again costs some jewels, is an air dash. Similar to the drill or the potion I don't bother remembering the name of, this lets you do a little charge mid-air and just smash anything in your path away. Unlike the drill though, Mina just keeps going and doesn't stop for anything. Except Gravity, the ultimate villain, because it does burn out pretty fast. The last ability to air dash is honestly her most versatile ability, since it's the only one that gives her extra movement to her bulky form, and she kinda needs that. She's otherwise just a pure combat-focused creature that tears through enemies like cheese. But there's a catch. There's always a catch. Well, you see, Beast Mina has 2 major weaknesses that kinda make it hard for me to want to use her in an actual playthrough. The first being obvious. She can't use trinkets. We use all the trinket slots to equip the bestium that triggers the change in her plasma vials in the first place, you have to leave them equipped in order for it to keep going. If you remove even one, then boop, that's it. Back to normal Mina. This means a lot of the trinkets that would normally fix her issues are just impossible to equip, making her sorta dead in the water. Not literally, of course, but still fun to play. Of course, her other big issue is that she can't drink plasma vials, or rather, she doesn't have to. Unlike other weapons or even normal Mina entirely, this Beast Mina is built for pure combat and might be a vampire. I mean, she still has a reflection, I think. You only regain health by either escaping into the Underlab, which often isn't an option, or by tearing and chewing the life force right out of your foes, ripping them apart and drinking their essence directly into your own heart so you can keep it beating. Ah, the life. But that's also to say that if there are no enemies around, you can't heal at all. Of course, I hear you saying, that's a normal issue for Mina, isn't it? Yeah, but you don't even regain plasma from hitting things, so you can't hold on to it to poof back to normal, drink a plasma vial, and then beast up again as regular Mina would. Although, flowers are apparently fine. Even a monster like Mina can stop to smell, or eat, the flowers every now and then, right? I wonder what they taste like. So, overall, that's all Beast Mina does. So what do I think of her? She's funny, and she's there. If not for her lack of mobility, which makes a lot of puzzles kind of impossible, I could see her being a fun thing to only use in another playthrough. Her biggest issue is not being able to regain plasma through attack, since it makes falling into pits, which do a lot of damage still, even more damaging than usual. I also feel like I don't really understand how to combo with her, or understand where her power truly lies in terms of combat. Especially since, as I said, I already had my strength max when I got her. I think she'd tear through all the bosses, and it'd be interesting to go back and challenge them again with this new form, but sadly I did not do that. Perhaps one day. Regardless, I think she's a fun twist, and given the theme of the game, I'm really glad she exists. My only real request is that some of the characters should react to her, like some of the people in town should flinch at the sight of her, or even have some of the characters outside just run away in fear instead of challenge her. Little things like that would be pretty fun, because, you know, she is intimidating. In that cute kind of, oh god, what is that mutant mouse thing that I just found in my basement kind of way. You know the feeling. But overall, I just want to say that they did a great job with this beast form. Definitely isn't perfect, but when you're beasting out that hard, you're already perfect where it matters. But, with all that said, that was my full Mina the Hollower weapon reviews. I hope all my comments about the strengths and weaknesses of the weapons made sense and didn't leave any foul taste in anyone's mouth. I do also have a small tier list here of how I valued the weapons, which goes as such. S tier is, of course, the Battery Buster and the Blast Strike Maul. Both of them fit in the highly aggressive way I enjoy playing these kinds of games, and while they're vastly different weapons, I still enjoyed them from start to finish. With or without their upgrades, I'd still use them just fine and enjoyed having them as weapons. And honestly, it's hard to choose between them, but I might put the Battery Buster a little higher. Having that range difference is the world to me. A tier is Whisper and Vesper. I feel like this pair of knives are held back quite a bit by being so dull and boring without their upgrades, but as soon as I had just one of those upgrades, they were already greatly enjoyable. I think the knife tossing upgrade is what really sells them for me, just pew! There it goes! Now go get it. Like, the versatility of that alone and the fact that the game is not holding your hand, unless you do something dumb with it, just really gets me for some reason. But honestly, I think the combo I found where you can toss it into an enemy and then dash forward to catch the knife on its way down and hit your enemy away is what I really enjoyed doing the most. It really just turned those knives into a fun combo weapon set that I didn't expect to enjoy, considering how weak I felt the default level was. But moving on is B tier for Beast. Like I said just a few moments ago, I don't really think I understand how strong this form is or how to properly use it. But I could see this becoming a fan favorite for a lot of people who enjoy just running in and going rabid on enemies, just tearing them to shreds with no remorse. It's really just the lack of trinkets that hold this back. It'd be nice to do some challenge run or something that combines all the beast team into one trinket, so they only take up one slot. That way you'd be able to enjoy the form and combine it with some fun trinkets that take care of its weaknesses. But even as it is now, I think if I had fought a few bosses with it, I would have probably rated it a little higher, depending on how well it did. C tier is the Casket. I didn't really mean to keep this tier list letter themed or anything, but whoops. Anyway, I can't parry with this thing because I'm a filthy casual, but I had some fun using it when I first got it, and even the carving man couldn't dig his way past my ultimate defense. However, it's down here not because I suck at using it, but because of the upgrades. They just aren't enough, and really drag the weapon down a lot for me. Maybe the devs will at least put that tossing attack on the other attack button, that might fix how it feels, but for right now, it stays in C tier. I'm sure even people who love this weapon still pawn off that upgrade. And lastly, D tier, Nightstar. Oh, Nightstar, I'm sorry I couldn't use you properly. I could never really use whip weapons to their full potential in a lot of games, but this one felt especially sad at times, and I couldn't bring myself to use it after Thorn kept knocking me off the snowy mountain so many times with it. Genuinely, I want this weapon to be better, but much like the Casket, its upgrades hold it down, and it's just so slow. But then again, maybe I just felt like it was wrong since I was playing La Mulana 2 at the time as well, and that game also has a whip, which is far superior in speed and a lot shorter. So it just never really felt like I was in the right range when I was using the Nightstar. I felt like I had to get closer, and that's just not how that weapon's used. That's not entirely true, but it's possible I was doing that subconsciously. Still, I'm sorry, Nightstar. I'm sure there's someone out there who loves you, but it's not this blob. And that's it! My personal review, tier list, and thoughts on weapons in Mina the Hollower. Thanks so much for watching and listening if you made it this far, and I hope you enjoyed my yapping away! Please leave a like and a comment if you did, even if it's just to yell at me about how wrong I am about Nightstar or any of the other weapons and how they're the coolest weapons around. Plus, I want to hear your thoughts, and please tell me if I missed anything. After all, it's entirely possible I was just using something completely wrong. Additionally, if you like this video because of my voice, check out my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/BlueMagicReviews. I stream there pretty often and could use not just the views, but also ideas. Should I make another one of these Mina videos about the trinkets? Or maybe some other game with some interesting mechanics? Who knows? At least I don't yet, but I would greatly appreciate any reviews on my own content, as I haven't done this in a long time, and it definitely shows. I'm a self-taught amateur and have no idea what I'm doing. I'm gonna do the best I can with what I've got and what I know. I hope you enjoy the path to the top with me. But that's been me, BlueMagicReviews, and I hope I leave you with a smile on your face. Bye for now!